Greetings, Corpse Clubbers, and welcome to another episode of Corpse Club, the official podcast of DailyDead.com. I am one of your co-hosts, Heather Wixson, and for this week's episode, we have something very special for you all. In honor of the upcoming release of The Girl on the Third Floor, I am joined this week by none other than Phil Brooks, who stars and gets pretty much manhandled in the movie throughout as well. So thank you so much for joining me this week, Phil.
Oh, no problem. I'm happy to be here.
It's funny. This has been sort of like a 6-month journey for you guys now. And with the day we're speaking, you guys are playing at the Egyptian, which is pretty rad. I mean, is that cool to see this 6 months culminate, basically here in Los Angeles?
Yeah, I'm all kinds of things. I'm excited. I'm nervous. I didn't know what to expect after South by Southwest when people saw the film for the first time. I didn't know if I was supposed to read reviews, but I kind of just equated it to what I used to do in my life, where everyone was just constantly reviewing everything I did. You have a match on a Monday night and it's just instantly reviewed and people are critiquing you. And so I gave it a shot and I was pleasantly surprised that all the reviews have been positive. So I'm kind of spoiled now. I'm looking more forward to more positive reviews. I just hope everybody loves the movie because I think it's really terrific, obviously, but I'm biased.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. You're obviously no stranger to performing, but this is something very different. And I kind of want to go way, way back. Being a kid growing up in the Chicago suburbs, I mean, whether you're wrestling or you're being creative in terms of, working in comics or doing something like movies, was there a point when you realized, there's something more I want out of life? And you realized, even when you're in a wrestling ring, there's still sort of the physical creativity that you have to have when you're in there. So I'm curious, what was it you realized, there's something more to life, and you kind of decided, hey, this is something, I want to push myself.
Well, I didn't grow up, rich. I wasn't afforded, a whole bunch of cool opportunities and stuff like that. And I didn't really have an avenue or really an escape from what I was born into. So I just kind of gravitated towards things that I loved, and I did those things and was fortunate to be successful at them. So, I think a lot of people go through life afraid to try stuff because they're afraid of failing. And I just absolutely embrace it because that's how you learn. Everything is born of failure. Nobody just set out to do something and nailed it on the first try. And you either keep doing it or you give up. I'm fortunate to be able to do all these cool, awesome things, I
relate to that a lot just because I also, as grew up in Chicago. I was basically a kid with a single mom, grew up in a trailer park right across the street from O'Hare. And I think there's a testament to people who don't see sort of the limitations of their circumstances and just kind of push forward. How did you figure out okay, this is my steps towards carving out my own path? Because I think there's some kids out there who think the circumstances they grew up in, what are they going to do? And I think, there's a testament to what you've been able to do. You were able to sort of go beyond your circumstances. Is there a secret to that?
I think you just have to be disciplined. You have to be goal oriented, and you have to realize to reach whatever goal you have, there's going to be tremendous sacrifice, and you have to do whatever you can to reach those goals. My goal at one point in time was to make a living wrestling, and it wasn't easy. It's super difficult. So to make a living in wrestling, I had 3 jobs, on top of the wrestling. It's just like going to college, I would imagine. I don't know. I never went to college, but if you're a full-time student and an athlete and you have a job, it's just that. How do you fit all that into 24 hours? I think successful people just find a way.
I know you probably get asked a lot of WWE questions, but I want to ask you about this one match in particular. There's a match that was 90 minutes where it was you and Chris Hero. I think it's IWA Mid-South.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. You guys were putting everything into that match, and there's maybe 50, or it's a very small rate, but
34 people, I think.
And it was you guys were going at it in that match. Can you talk? And that to me, everybody talks about the great stuff you've done in WWE, and you did, but that's a match we watch a lot in our house because it's so awesome.
Bless your heart.
you guys really, you didn't have to go as hard as you did. And you guys just, you did.
I just think we're passionate about wrestling, and the whole, I apologize frequently to independent wrestling fans who had to sit through a lot of 60-minute matches, because I think I'm the guy who started all that. And
So it's your fault.
Yeah, it's 100% my fault. But it was very much like the genesis of that whole idea was me looking at what made a good wrestler, or what good wrestlers did back in the day. And if you looked at the traveling NWA champions, from Jack Briscoe to Dory Funk Jr. to Harley Race to Ric Flair, they went everywhere, and they had to have the ability to wrestle 60 minutes every single night, because they would come into these territories and they would wrestle the local hero, and you couldn't just beat him. The local hero had to take the champ 60 minutes to prove that he could hang, and then people still needed to buy a ticket to see the guy the next week. So if you just beat him, you just beat him. So I looked at it like an artist in a blank canvas, like every time. And I also think I'm a kind of person who gets very, very bored doing the same thing. So monotony is the death of me. So I'm an independent wrestler, and I'm going down every, Wednesday, Saturday, whenever I can, to wrestle in IWA, and I'm filling my schedule with all these other dates. And Hero was a guy that loved wrestling as much as I did, maybe more. And I just got this stupid idea that, I was like, here we are, we're wrestling a lot of the times in front of 5 people, 10 people. On big shows, they'd have, 500 people, but we were there every week just to learn. I was like, let's just wrestle for 60 minutes and see what happens. So it's kind of the genesis of that. So what do you do after 60 minutes? Oh, you wrestle 90. Looking back at it now, it seems a little bit ridiculous, but it really is just an artist trying a different, medium, messing with paints and charcoals and doing all kinds of different things. That's really the way I looked at it. And I think it just made both of us better.
No, I totally agree. And, obviously you went on to find a lot of great success in WWE, to the fact that, like, even though you've been gone for years now, it's like you're still a fixture in that world, which is really funny.
Yeah.
But, like, I think it's interesting that once you left WWE, you started to find different ways to sort of push yourself. And I'm curious, when Girl on the Third Floor came along, was it something like, had you been thinking about moving into acting? Was it, how did the stars sort of align for that? Was that something you were like, this is where I want to go? Like, I'm just curious as to what was sort of the genesis for you to sort of take this new turn in your career.
Well, I think acting's always been on the radar, in the same way that, like, being in a band has always been on the radar, and it was just nothing I ever really 100% pulled the trigger on, But being in the WWE bubble, and then all of a sudden being outside of the bubble and kind of not having a job, afforded me opportunities to do a bunch of other stuff I always wanted to do. I got to fight. I got to write comic books. I got, and here comes movies, something that was always offered to me. I mean, I'm always given scripts. I'm always asked, oh, do you want to be a part of this? And I say no a lot. Maybe because I can, I don't know, but nothing ever really jumped off the page until Girl on the Third Floor. When you see the names attached to it, that alone, I was like, well, I have to do this. And then I read the script and I'm like, okay, great. Like, it checked all the boxes. A lot of the times you'll get a good script and then they're like, well, we don't have any money. We're waiting for the money. We can't hire you or anybody. I'm like, okay, well, why did you bother to ask? Or they have money and the script is terrible. Like with Girl on the Third Floor, everything just seemed to line up, from, Travis being involved to MPI being involved, Queensberry Pictures. Everything was just almost too good to be true.
What was Travis's pitch to you then to get you to do this?
Travis didn't pitch me.
Okay.
It was, basically it was Greg Newman from MPI who pitched me, and he pitched it. Basically, this is a Chicago-centric movie. Travis Stevens is the writer-director, and we have Steve Albini doing the score. And I was just like, that confused me, because I know Steve, not personally, but I know he'd he's kind of like me. He sits back and says no to everything. So I was like, well, they got Albini, and then you look up Travis's name and you see that he's attached to all these great movies. Producer on Jodorowsky's Dune, Starry Eyes, We're Still Here. You know, the list goes on and on. How do you say no to that? You know, I'm fortunate to be in a position where if anybody wants me to do anything, I'm open to listen. You just have to make me an offer I can't refuse.
So going into this, I mean, obviously you're working at, you know, on an independent level. So it's not like, you know, it's a family affair, basically.
Very much so, yes.
Was it also nice to being able to sort of work with this close-knit group of people, but also still be close to home? I mean, there's a lot of people who would kind of kill for that.
Unbelievable. Didn't have to travel. You know, we moved into a hotel the duration of shooting, and I had my dog and my wife with me. You know, got to see him. Started my day with my dog and my wife. Ended my day with my dog and my wife. And in the middle, somebody paid me to goof off an act. You can't beat it.
So going into this and talking about the character of Don, I mean, he's kind of a dick, but he's somebody you want to keep watching and compelling. And he's very compelling in that way that, like, there's a lot of not great guys in horror, but there's something about Don that you're so tied up with him in this thing that he's caught, you know, sort of caught in the middle of. Is there a way of, like, sort of finding, you know, making a guy who isn't technically likable still likable? Like, is there sort of a secret to that? Like, I mean, it's just one of those, like, I remember writing the review and I was like, God, like, he is pretty much a dick in this, but also I probably, you know, would have watched him, you know, in other movies too. You know what I mean? Like, there's something to him.
So I think everybody in the world has a different version of you. The Heather I know is different than, you know, the Heather your boyfriend knows. Everybody who has ever met me has a different version of me, whether you're a fan on the street that has, you know, poked me in the back and then you get that fill, or, you know, you're a fan who's respectful and you get, you know, so I look at it like I've had friends who have done messed up stuff to other people. I have done messed up stuff to other people. None of us are perfect.
Yeah.
And I think what is really awesome about this movie is it takes the structure of a movie, being the first person you see is me. So you're instantly like, oh, here's the hero. Great. This guy. And then we peel back layers and you get to see who Don really is. And then it's your call. You make the judgment call. Is Don an asshole? Is Don just human? Can he be redeemed? I think that's the fun part about this movie, you know. So I played it as subtle as I possibly could, and I just waited for direction from Travis. You know, this is his baby, and I just kind of a tool that he used to get the point across.
Well, and I think also too, like, for a lot of, 90% of this movie is you.
I know. It's a spoiler alert, everybody.
But I mean, it all works really well because I think, you know, anybody who's ever owned a home and had to deal with the crap that comes along with that, like, I mean, you've performed in front of thousands of people. You've been seen, you know, worldwide in front of millions of audiences. How nerve-wracking was it for you, though, to realize, like, oh my God, like, this movie lives or dies by me? Like, it really does.
I mean, I think I'd be disappointed if it died because of me, you know, and I would feel bad for, you know, Greg and Travis and, you know, the people whose baby this was. But for me, I think there's liberation in just running straight towards whatever scares you to death. It's my reason for doing anything in life. Just, we'll deal with what happens afterwards. But so acting, you know, I didn't get inside my own head about it. I wasn't freaked out about it. And I wanted to make sure that I did my job and I did my part. So I very much said, hey guys, if I suck, if I wind up doing this in the first week and you guys are like, this isn't working out, like, let's get somebody else. You know, but also, like, tell me, you know, you want more, you want less, let's work it out. And there was never a problem. So I'm not saying I'm, you know, Laurence Olivier or anything like that. But
so you're basically calling yourself the Laurence Olivier of horror, I think, is what we're getting at.
I think that's Bruce Campbell. I think But no, to me, it was just like having fun with good people. And I looked at it like that. And then if there was ever a serious conversation needed to be had about my performance, we had it. And then I would just self-correct all the time. It's the benefit of not doing live television and being able to do a movie where you can do multiple takes, because you can do something and I can look at Travis and go, huh? And then he, thumbs up, thumbs down, let's shoot it again. And then I even got to play, hey, can we do it one more time and do it how I think it should, it is so much fun.
Did you find that liberating? Because a lot of, in wrestling, you get one shot. You go out there and it's live and you got to just do it. Was it liberating and sort of freeing in a creative type of scenario, like to be able to just go and like play around and really dig in?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then it was also just fun because I'd be like, hey, can I do it this way? And Travis would be like, no, we're doing, we're doing it my way. And I'd be like, awesome. That's great. He's a director. I was just free of any, worry about, because when I'm in a wrestling ring, I have no boss, and that's awesome for me. But it's also can be stressful because I felt the need always to be the guy in charge and to be the leader. So it's nice to have somebody else who's just like, no, do it this way. And I just like, okay, great.
That's awesome. Did you realize going into this how much he was going to end up torturing you, though? Because like you mentioned Bruce Campbell, and you're put through the ringer on this pretty much almost on par with the stuff that Sam used to do to Bruce.
Yeah, I don't think I realized it. I mean, I read the script and I just didn't right away put two and two together. I just read the script and I was like, oh, this sounds great. And then shooting days, some days I would be like, oh yeah, okay, I really have to do this now. Okay, great. But it was fun. And Travis always says like how just accommodating I was just to roll with it. There was a couple mornings, it was really, really cold outside, and I'm covered in slop, just standing there in my underwear in a t-shirt covered in wet slop, like as they set up a new shot. And I'm like, you can't wipe this stuff off. They're like, oh, let's dry them off. I'm like, you can't, I got to be covered in this stuff. I'll just deal with it. So yeah, I think when you work for WWE, everything else is easy. I don't think even if somebody tortured me, I'd just be like, huh, all right, it's not so bad. They'd be like, man, this guy's really tough. What do we got to do? It's just that is a whole different lifestyle and grind. So to me, this was easy.
I'll keep it vague because obviously I don't want to ruin it for folks, but there's also some body horror elements to this movie as well, which was pretty awesome, which meant you got to sort of be in the realm of special effects. Was that a completely different experience for you?
No, because I shot Rabid before
Rabid was
did
first.
this. So, but also sitting in a makeup chair and having people fuss with you, that feels like it's old hat to me. It was just so much fun to be a part of that. Dan Martin, who did the special effects for Lords of Chaos, worked on this film, and the dude's a genius. What he can do on little to no budget and what he did for this movie, I think is phenomenal. Because there's one thing for him to show you how a gag's going to work or how a prosthetic looks, and then there's another thing to actually apply it and shoot it and have it look realistic on screen. Watching it back, and the guy is just brilliantly amazing. I think I was surrounded with so many talented people in this film. You're going to see them all everywhere. At least you should. I think everybody is so overwhelmingly talented that I couldn't help but look and be better than I really was.
So looking at this experience, how much did it, going into, with this and with Rabid, like I'm sure you had certain expectations of what acting would be like and what, being part of the filmmaking process would be like. How much did those viewpoints change, like once you came out of those experiences and you realized like, oh, this is a completely different beast than maybe, you'd realized?
The days are long. Nothing really surprised me. The most unnerving thing, being the lead and doing Girl on the Third Floor, was, I want to say for the first 2 weeks, I had nobody to play with. It was me and a dog. So dog's name is Cooper in the film. Dog's name is Riker in real life. So there was a lot of shots where it would be me and this dog. And I would look at Travis, be like, how was that? You know, I'm almost not reacting because you get a shot of me drilling something into a wall. Then you get a side shot of that. And then you're getting a shot of the perspective of the wall looking back at the character, Don. So a lot of that stuff, I'm not really doing much, you know? So to look at him and be like, are we doing that again? And he'd be like, no, go. And, you know, so now I'm in my own head and I'm worried, like, oh, did I do okay? But I'm not really doing anything. So the first 2 weeks was kind of stressful in that regard. And it was a little weird, but he's a director. So I'd always look to him and be like, if you got what you want, we're good. You know, he's like, I got what I want. I'm like, all right. It was only until I got to play with other people when Sarah, Travis, Trieste, like all these actors came on and I got to, you know, bounce ideas off them, talk about stuff, run lines. You know, that's when it changed and it became a little bit more relaxed and easier, if that makes sense.
I just, you know, commend you for your fortitude and the fact that you're basically playing against a dog and you just didn't spend the whole time playing with the dog, because I'm easily distracted with dogs.
I think you can make a 6-hour mini documentary about me and Riker just palling around and hanging out, you know, like that dog was amazing. The true star of the film.
He does steal the show a little bit, and I know there's a few moments where you're like, oh, you know, and you just, you know, you're rooting for the dog, I think, more than anybody else in that house.
Absolutely.
So, talking about Rabid, because, you know, I think it's interesting that, you know, your first two films are horror, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But was there something in particular? I mean, the Soskas are hella talented, and they've done some really fantastic stuff in their career. What was it sort of, was it working with them, working sort of within this context of the Cronenberg verse? Like, what was that, you know, initial hook for you to be like, yeah, I really want to be a part of this?
They've always said they wanted to work with me, and I've known them for years and years and years, you know, and unfortunately, obviously, we've lost Blockbuster Video and mom and pop, you know, video shops and stuff like that. And even to an extent now, what I used to do early 2000s is just go to Best Buy and I would look up and down the racks and just buy stuff that looked interesting. I think movies are much more interesting when you're removed from the zeitgeist, so you don't know everything about it, you know? A little bit of a tangent. That's why I love film festivals, is because there's so much content. I can just go and sit down and watch a movie and not know anything about it and just be like, oh, and I can get lost in it. I did that with Jojo Rabbit, and I did that with Parasite. You know, it's just
both amazing films.
Both ridiculously amazing films that I knew little to nothing about. And I went in, and they're both wildly different from what I imagined them to be. With the Soskas, I discovered them walking through a Best Buy in Louisville, Kentucky, and I found a dead hooker in a trunk. And that's one of those things where when I was a little kid, I used to walk into the local video stores called MTM Video, and I would go to the horror section, and I would rent movies based on the art on the box, right? So I did the same thing with DVDs. I would just buy stuff. Sometimes, you know, sometimes you hit a home run, sometimes you strike out. Dead hooker in a trunk, you can't pass that up.
That's like a bona fide home run right there.
Yeah, I mean, no, I'm looking at, so I buy it, and this is like, you know, Twitter's a new thing, and me and my buddy Cliff sit down and watch Dead Hooker in a Trunk, and I'm like, this is great, you know? So I just tweet randomly, and that was like, honestly, that was like my first Twitter. We became Twitter friends, you know, because you realize that you can tweet somebody, and then they can tweet you back, and like they were tickled pink that I watched their movie and I loved it, and you know, ever since then we just had this relationship of, you know, oh, I want to work with you, and I would see them at WWE shows, and this just all lined up. You know, I read, you know, the only I'll say this and I'll make them laugh. The only bad thing about the twins is they're Canadian. And I say so that, and I say that because they're so truly awesome, and that whole Canadian scene. Everybody on that film is Canadian. I was the only one who.
Oh, interesting. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and it was that takes some strings being pulled. You know, me coming through immigration, being grilled by an agent. You know, why can't a Canadian do this? Is legit what they asked me, and I just went, I don't know, man. My agents said, hey, you want to go do this movie in Toronto? And I went, well, okay. You know, and they let me in the country. But I read for the lead role, and they were, of course, like, oh, you're great, but you're not Canadian. We're going to put you in this smaller part. And I was just like, guys, I don't care. Let's hang out and have fun. And, Ben Hollingsworth is in the lead. He kills it. I couldn't have done what he did. I play a smaller role of Billy, and the Soskas have a Billy in every single one of their movies. So if you know anything about that, I'm the Billy this time around. And it is small part, but very, very fun and pivotal parts of the movie.
Is it sort of like cosmic kismet in a way that like getting to being a horror fan and being able to do your first two roles in horror? I mean, was that purposeful? Was it just the way the stars aligned? Like, I mean, it's pretty remarkable that people get to do that.
Yeah, I think it's the way the stars aligned. I also think it may be an easier genre to get into, but I also look at it like all the other wrestlers who have transcended and gone on to acting, who's done a horror movie. So that's Phil always trying to be different than everybody else. I always look at the landscape of things and I see what more oftentimes than not what people aren't doing, and then I'll do that because that's what you need to do to stand out. But I just love horror. I've loved horror since I could form a thought, and I'd have it no other way. If somebody was like, we want you to be in this rom-com, I'd be like, if the script's good, let's do it. But I'm super, super fortunate, grateful, and pleased just to even be in a horror movie.
Well, going back to what you said about, that lost art of being able to walk up and down the aisles and sort of see those things that jump out at you. Like, do you remember, like, as a kid, like, what were the movies that, like, you saw it and you're like, holy crap, I need to rent this, like, with every fiber of my being? And, like, what were those movies that sort of stuck out to you as a kid, in terms of that artwork? Because I think artwork is sort of a lost, quote unquote, art, I guess, for lack of a better word. I
mean, just based on artwork, I remember always going and, like, boxes that stood out to me. Of course, Friday the 13th. Hockey mask. I'm a hockey kid. That resonated. Kind of goofier things like, Motel Hell and stuff like that. Anything with a graveyard on it. Zombie movies, of course, like the Return of the Living Dead and stuff like that. Like you see a box like that and you jump all over it when you're a little kid. But I mean, it got to a point where I had rented everything, So what was I going to do? And I think that's when you get into like the Italian horror movies, and you know what I mean? Like, obviously the internet becomes a thing and you discover there's all this other world out there that you can dive into. But yeah, the start of things was just going to I wasn't allowed to watch these movies, so of course I rented them and I watched them.
I was fortunate because my mom, being a single mom, like a lot of times it just meant she had to take me to the movies. Oh. So I was like 3 when she went to American Werewolf in London.
Wow.
And I remember my aunt was with her, and my aunt was such a scaredy cat with movies, and she was like, I think Heather's getting scared. I'm going to take her out. We're going to go play video games till you're done. But I still remember sitting, like being really little and sitting in a theater, and it was the movie theater scene in American Werewolf. In my head, like my little brain was like, wait, I'm in a movie theater. It was kind of crazy. But I think for me, like one of the things that I loved, did you ever check out Terror in the Aisles when you were a kid?
No.
So it was like this like documentary, and it's Donald Pleasance and Nancy Allen sitting in a theater talking about horror movies. But it was my Bible as a kid, because on the cover it was a skull with all these little titles, and I would go through and try to find those movies, which is like why I rented Suspiria when I was 8 years old, which was something my best friend still hasn't forgiven.
That's liner notes. Another thing that's gone the way of the dodo is liner notes on the inside of punk rock albums, where you go, oh, they thanked these people, I'm going to go buy all those albums now. Yeah, it's that's how we used to do things, ladies and gentlemen.
Us old folks.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's pretty cool because, like, as somebody who grew up loving horror, like, you're part of this now. Like, you're part of, basically where the genre is heading. And I mean, like, what do you think that kid who was walking around video stores would be like, holy, like, if there were still video stores, like, you'd be on the shelf.
Yeah, it's wild. And that kid would be scared, and I think if you're not scared of your dreams, they're not big enough, so I'm right where I need to be. It's fortunate and grateful are like the two words I just keep throwing out. And it's the 1st of October. It's my favorite month. Hockey's starting. Horror movies are abound, and I'm I'm taking my beautiful wife to a premiere of a horror movie that I am the star of tonight. Like if I walk outside and get hit by an Uber,
Well, don't get hit by an Uber till tomorrow.
It's been a good run, Yeah, the little Phil would, little Phil was a shit. He'd be like, "Wow, you've done a lot of cool stuff. Like what's next?"
Well, speaking of being sort of the start of the Halloween season, what do you guys do? Like, basically, is it just binging movies? Do you guys go crazy decorating? I'm just curious, like, what is it that you guys are doing at the Brooks house for Halloween?
I think my wife is a reluctant horror movie fan. She doesn't understand how I can rewatch movies. She does not rewatch movies. I feel like the only reason I still pay for cable television is I have this very nostalgic feeling of being able to turn the TV on if I have a little bit of downtime and scrolling through the movies and being like, "Oh, the thing's on." Yeah, of course.
I will say Stars is the best for old horror movies.
Yeah, and you
Stars.
just put it on, and I'm that guy that quotes the movie and Ape hates it. But I think the first movie we ever sat on a couch and watched was Rosemary's Baby, because I was like, "You've never seen Rosemary's Baby?"
That's amazing.
Okay, without getting into how problematic the director is, let's just watch this film. Yeah, we binge horror movies, and I'm always fascinated by what she likes. Was it Tales of Halloween? That's the anthology that has a little why isn't there a sequel to that yet? Because
that is a very, very good question.
That's like gateway horror for my wife. She loved that, but she just thought it was cute and it was funny, and then they can throw in some gross stuff for me, and everybody in the family's happy. We'll binge movies. We'll binge candy. We carve pumpkins every year. We dress up every year. It's a Halloween household for sure. It's my favorite holiday.
Are there certain movies that you watch? I mean, I'm like you, where I watch a lot of the same movies over and over again. As much as my job is about watching new horror movies, especially during October, just being able to kind of kick back and watch the stuff that I love over and over again, is what, kind of keeps me going throughout the busiest month of the year for us. Is there things that you're like, "Oh, we've got to watch this, we got to watch this, we got to watch this"?
Well, I'm always trying to watch new stuff just to break up the monotony. But yeah, I will, without fail, I'll watch The Thing too many times this month. I'll watch all the Halloweens too many times this month. I'll try to watch all the Friday the 13th with a couple of exceptions. But I'm
curious as to what your exceptions are.
I mean, Jason Goes to Hell. You don't need to see that.
I like Jason.
I don't need to watch it.
I love body swapping horror though, so I think that's why I'm into that one. But
I don't need to watch it. Discovering something new to me is as genuine and as joyful as watching an old favorite. So. Horror to me, I feel is going through this boom. So I can wake up, I can watch a horror movie, I can work out, I can train, I could do whatever job I have to do that day, and then that night I can go to the theater and see a horror movie. It's pretty wild. I'm just excited for October. I'm gonna watch a horror movie at least one a day, and God damn it, I get to start today watching my own horror movie. It's just so bizarre.
It's pretty rad. One movie I would recommend for, I want to say AJ, but it's April. Watch Little Monsters when it shows up on Hulu. And I think based on the fact that you said she likes Tales of Halloween, it's a little bit lighter of horror, but it's a zombie comedy with Lupita Nyong'o.
Yep.
And it is amazing. And I guarantee it's going to be her favorite movie she's seen all month. So do that.
I haven't seen it yet, and I want to. So we'll put it on the list.
It was one of my favorites out of Sundance. Everybody left with a big smile on their face. But
Good.
You've been through it. So, but yeah. So thinking about all of this stuff, I know everybody asks, when are you coming back to wrestling? When are you doing this? Frankly, I want to see you staying here and doing this kind of stuff. So I'm curious, are you still is that acting bug just under your skin now? Is this it for you now?
I mean, I'll never say it's it for me.
Gotcha.
I'm still that little kid who's okay, what's next?
Yeah.
But I think when it comes to acting, there's so many variables and opportunities to do so many different things. And I look at my buddy Dave Bautista, who, I mean, he's a movie star. You know, I mean, he can call his shot. He can do what he wants, but he still makes sure that what he does is quality. He's not just doing movies to do movies. There's plenty of guys who go out there and there's just like, you know, I do these action movies and they're just kind of like rehashed and they're the same. And I've been offered those and I always say no, because to me, it has to be quality. And I also want to learn. You know, I think doing stuff just to do it is a disservice to myself, because I won't gain any knowledge. Working with Travis, Greg, the producer, opposite, you know, Trieste, all these people who I learn from. So that's what I'm interested in doing, whether it's, you know, horror, whether it's a comedy, romantic comedy, drama, whatever. I'm looking to grow as a person and have fun doing it. And I really feel like acting benefits that. So yeah, I'd like to think I'm here to stay. You know, hopefully people see this and it's onwards and upwards, you know, and it's a launching pad for another career. I have a few, you know, and many more to come. You know, I just kind of want to experience everything.
Well, I mean, you know, this is sort of a not serious question, but I mean, realistically, you mentioned Dave, who is one of the most lovely people I think I've ever gotten a chance to speak to, present company excluded. But like, I talked to him at Sundance like a few years ago, and his handler left, and I was like, oh, we can be done, and he's like, no, we can keep talking. And then he was basically talking about how WWE was so shitty to him when he came back during the whole Blue Tista thing and everything like that. And then afterwards, he was like, I feel like I should give you a hug. And then he's like, do you want a picture? And I was like, are we best friends now? I think we're best friends. But clearly you worked in the world of Marvel. So, I mean, can you just be like, hey guys, like if there's something like, do you just call Marvel up? Is that how it works? Come on, let's be like, you know, we've got another Guardians coming up. I
don't think the thought process behind that is, oh man, I don't want to be that desperate. But then also, like, if you don't ask, the answer is always no.
Exactly.
So, like, you know, I just put stuff out into the universe. Like, people ask me, like, oh, who would you want to play in the Marvel universe? And, you know, obviously, it's one of those situations where if they came and asked me to be Paste Pot Pete in a 3-second scene in the Spider-Man film, I'm not saying no, you know, but I look at, you know, like in 2019, I think a very fascinating Spider-Man villain could be Kraven, because they could update it where Kraven's like one of these right-wing militia dudes. You know, and I think they almost are going in that direction when they had J. Jonah Jameson. Yeah, like J. Jonah Jameson at the end of the last Spider-Man film. Spoiler alert, everybody! It reveals who Spider-Man is, and he's almost playing like this this lunatic right-wing pundit. You know, so I think Kraven could be updated, and it could be a hell of a story, and selfishly, I would love to play Kraven. But I'd love to be Moon Knight. It's acting. I think that's what's fun about it, is you can not be married to any single thing, and with makeup and special effects and acting, you can contort and twist yourself into any number of characters.
Yeah, and I think what's also kind of cool is there's a lot of people who've come from the world of quote-unquote horror who have made a name for themselves in Marvel, between like James Gunn and Scott Derrickson. Like, I love that Scott Derrickson is giving us our very first Marvel horror movie. Like, right. I'm so excited. My niece, like, is a super Marvel nerd, and she's like, I don't know about this one. And I was like, oh, trust me, just wait. Like, she just turned 14. I was like,
you got to find those gateway horror movies.
Yeah, you know, I was like, you used to play with Monster High. Trust me, this is going to end up being your favorite. But yeah, I just think it's such an interesting time, because it's also sort of this rebirth of Marvel, because we're done with this huge 10-year phase, and I'm really excited just as a fan. Like, I don't know we know what's coming in terms of the movies, but I don't know what's coming.
Yeah, I was talking about this the other day. Like, I don't know what the plan is, like if they're going to be building towards another sort of big arc, and I don't know what it could be, and I'm excited to find out.
Yeah. You know, kind of looking at, we'll just sort of wrap up, but like looking at this whole experience, you know, 6 months of doing this, few years of, you know, going between Rabid and all this, like, what has been your biggest takeaway from your experience, you know, from this side of your career in terms of acting? I mean, what's been the biggest surprises? What's been the biggest lessons for you? And what's been your takeaway?
I think because it's more on the independent level, I was surprised at how nice everybody was, right? I think coming from a place where everybody was not so nice, and that was kind of the norm, and you were just always on the go, and the grind is very, very hard, and I was pretty miserable for so long, and that was just like the normal. To be able to go to work every day and just be surrounded by nice people. Soska's got a rule.
Amazing, right?
Soska's legitimately, after they introduced me to everybody on their team, they're all women, and they're like, we have one rule on set: no assholes. So I mean, I'm talking like, from the guy holding the boom mic to, costume designers to caterers. Like, everybody greets you with a smile. Everybody's happy to be there. And everybody is good at their job because they're passionate and they love their job. And that's kind of an eye-opener, but a pleasant surprise, And it was the same with Girl on the Third Floor. Just, you hear stories about how actors and directors are screaming at each other and stuff like that. And I just didn't experience any of that. Everybody was just there, and I felt like everybody woke up every morning with like this gratitude of, this is my job. I'm making a movie. And we're having fun doing it, and it's also super quality and really good. It's got a message. That was my biggest surprise, So I'm spoiled in that regard now. So hopefully going forward, it's always like that. But I'll brace myself when the other opportunities come.
Excellent. One quick question, because you mentioned there were scripts that you sort of passed up or anything. I'm just curious, was there anything that you passed up where now you're like, oh, maybe I should have done that? Is there ever any regret, or is it just always moving forward?
No, there's no such thing as regret in my world. It's always moving forward. I think I have a lot of instances where I have read for things and didn't get. And then when I see the person who gets it, I go, oh, yeah, that was absolutely the right decision. Like, there's no way. Yeah, okay. I always think that's funny. Nobody likes rejection, but I think when you're in this field, you have to, number one, you have to audition for stuff. As awful as it feels, like self-taping is like the worst thing in the world. It doesn't feel genuine. You never feel like you do a good job. But you hustle and you do what you can, and for every 65 no's you get a girl on the third floor that says yes, and it's perfect, and it makes everything worth it.
Excellent. Well, Phil, thank you so much for taking time to chat today. This was amazing and definitely not intimidating whatsoever.
I don't know why you keep saying that. I'm just Phil from Chicago.
Just Phil from Chicago.
I'm just a dude. I don't know why.
Well, I'm glad that we got to catch up. Just a dude. But for those of you listening, Girl on the Third Floor comes out on October 25th.
Yeah, everywhere. Video on demand, October 25th. In select theaters, October 25th. So if you have iTunes and all that stuff, and you're a scaredy cat and you want to watch on your own couch and eat your snacks at home, do that.
Thank you so much, Phil, for being here today. And then for those of you listening, thank you so much for supporting Corpse Club. You can find out more about us at corpseclub.com. For all your news, reviews, and interviews, you can head over to dailydead.com or find us over on Twitter at dailydeadnews. And until next time, everybody, stay scary.